Hello around the world, ladies and gentlemen. Oops, I almost forgot to turn on my podcast. Hello around the world, ladies and gentlemen, and everyone in between. You're watching That Other Web Show with CJ Davidson, special edition. Let's try it again. Okay, so now we got our podcast going. Hello around the world, ladies and gentlemen, and everyone in between. I am your host, CJ Davidson. What's up? Welcome to the show. Welcome to our special historical segment called the Impeachment Vlogs. As we stated in the introduction, this broadcast is here to focus on solutions and reunite our tattered country and our homeland, the United States. First, I'd like to say to opposing supporters that we here in America all love our country, and we can be united again through logic and reasoning. Granted, reasoning is not a prime commodity with opposing supporters, but after this broadcast, even the most rabid and hateful occupant supporter will find common ground with the rest of us. As stated in the introduction, we are now entering historical time in our lives, and this has only occurred 3 times in our nation's history. This morning, the occupant tweeted, "This is a coup," which is usually a violent overthrow of the government. That's not what's happening. This is an impeachment as written in our Constitution. I'm kind of baffled why anyone would listen to the bluster or any of the stuff that comes out of the individual's cake hole, if you will. But when you dumb down your society like we've done, where you don't have the power to question why this is happening or what can I do to make things better, then all of that goes out the window, and then you have what's called a serfdom or a slave society. As you recall, they weren't allowed to read or write. Okay, so we go on. So far, the suspect number 1, as I like to call him, is being impeached for the following crimes. And that's debatable, of course, but we'll discuss that later, whether or not they're actual crimes, misdemeanors, and all that. Soliciting an investigation from a foreign power against a potential rival, Joe Biden, former Vice President Joe Biden, for the 2020 elections. Most supporters of the occupant will say, well, that's just hearsay. That's just what somebody has said, But the whistleblower got his information from another source. After suspect number 1 turned over the transcript and confessed to the press to everything he thought would vindicate him and get him out of it, turned out that the whistleblower complaint is already true. And he basically confessed to it all, thinking that it would get him out of it. We also heard last week the occupant called the whistleblower a spy and hinted that he or she should be treated like a spy in the old days. Well, the problem with that is that they're not a spy, and that indicates like a gangster-like kind of mentality in the White House, and we don't want that now, do we? We want someone who's a little more reasonable toward things. Well, not to call up the leader of the Ukraine and make a deal for himself, or he's going to withhold the weapons to fight the Russians, who Trump likes, clearly. I think everybody will agree on that. Trump has a hard-on for the Russians, and Putin. Have you ever heard those Southern guys, Southern senators, try to pronounce Putin? I want to know what Putin is talking about when he's talking to Mr. You-Know-Who. Some people have called the occupant even worse than Tricky Dick Nixon, which is quite an achievement to say the least. To go down in history as even more corrupt than Dick Nixon is beyond our wildest imaginations. Why Would anybody want to be more corrupt than Dick Nixon? Notice I don't call any of these people president. Have you noticed that? I don't call anybody president. None of these people, because whoa, sorry. Oh, I got a little too impassioned there in my vlog cast. Oh, I'm looking kind of weird. I wonder. That looks pretty cool, though. I think I like that. Yeah, I like that. Okay, so this is really a trippy vlogcast. Just cast your shadow on this. As Ms. Rachel Maddow says, there's only 3 or 4 people running our government, and it appears to be the case. Mike Pompeo, who heard the call about Russia and all of that stuff. Oh, wow, that's too much. I'm going to have to fix that. Yeah, I'm looking kind of weird. All right, so it's broadcasting okay. Okay, so now maybe I'm just too close to the... There we go. I don't know. Okay, or too far away. Mike Pompeo, William Barr, Reichsfuhrer Stephen Muller, and of course the occupant, which is about 3 or 4 people that run the whole government. One of the offenses being taken into consideration is the immense profiteering. This is one of the other crimes, as in the emoluments clause. If you remember that word, I believe that George Clooney, John Goodman, Bill Murray were the emoluments men. This was stolen money, I believe, stolen booty, treasure from from those people, and returned back to the original owner. So when you hear emoluments clause, that means that you have an issue with you're making money off the government. Simple as that. All of his hotels, whenever the rich, whenever the rich or the Russians or Arabs come in, they always use his hotels to curry favor. Can you go ahead and sell me some more weapons? Is it okay if we chop up Goshegi? You've got all these kinds of weird things happening when you're for sale. Okay, to just get to it, when you're for sale. Okay, so which leads us to tax issues. If the occupant is innocent, he would just hand over his tax returns. He says that they've been under, where they're reviewing his taxes for 5 years. Audit, pardon me. A lot of stuff here to deliver. Okay, so what we've got going on here is just another one of the offenses being taken into consideration due to immense profiteering, and the occupant has committed foreign dignitaries going to his hotels so that they can do things for him. Okay? I notice when I get too close to the thing. Whoa, or if I get too far. Okay, so here's what we'll do. We'll go right here. Okay, investigations have shown us that the occupant's cash flow from American banks stopped in the early 90s when his casinos folded. Nobody but Deutsche Bank funneling money from Russia would give him any money. Now, these are all investigations that we know happened. Okay? As events unfold, we can see why. Russia has been trying to lift sanctions imposed by Obama since the 2014 invasion of Ukraine, and again in 2016, for interfering in our election. If we look at these facts, it's difficult to actually call him president. In fact, I don't think I ever have. Clearly, he was installed both by Putin and the easily bribed Electoral College. Now, you say, well, if we don't have the Electoral College, the poor, smaller states won't have as big a voice. Okay, well, we can talk about that later. But if we focus on the Constitution, most people will agree that it's a loophole that bypasses the people's wishes or the popular vote. I remember hearing civics in high school when they were teaching civics in high school, when they removed the people from learning in government. or excuse me, I got it backwards here, that the popular vote is ignored in favor of a few elected officials in a few states. Have you noticed that you never hear the names of those electors? You never hear the people who are voting for us. Sometimes you'll hear it like a senator or a mayor or whatever, whoever voted in the Electoral College, and that's none of us. That's not you or me. That's a few people. And as we continue, America is the only nation that uses the Electoral College. All other democracies simply cast a vote and elect their officials. When the Constitution was drawn up there, 3 reasons for it, for having electors instead of voting from the people. Number 1, the general American population was uneducated and therefore could not cast an educated vote. Debunking this, most of us are educated enough to read about the candidates and which candidate would benefit them. Number 2, time and space. By the time word got out about the newly elected president to the vast American nation, there was a new president. Technology has given us instant news and information, therefore eliminating this excuse to have an electoral college. Oops, sorry again, I keep smashing my mic. I hope nobody ears got hurt. Okay, lastly, number 3, why do we have an electoral college? Lastly, the founding fathers did not trust people, the people, meaning us. As you know, the founding fathers were white, wealthy landowners who owned slaves. Does that make them bad? No. The common people were not included in the actual election of their president. They weren't included. You don't get a vote. You don't get to say who you really want to be your president, because we have a handful of people to vote for you. Much like the Soviet Union. Yeah. Okay. In the last election, most of the electors, ominous name, were Republicans, elected through gerrymandering. In other words, the reason that those electors are there is because of the practice of gerrymandering. Yes, gerrymandering is the process of redrawing electoral maps that specifically include people who will vote for a specific party. Gerrymandering has also been described as the process of politicians choosing their voters instead of voters choosing their elected officials. I'm sure you guys have heard that somewhere along the line. Okay. Make sure that okay, so my mic is going and the background is not. Okay, good. Alrighty. So you know now that the electors have been placed there because of gerrymandering. And most of them, not all, most of them are Republicans, okay? So what you've got to do here, I know what happened here. We have the issue of the green screen happening here. And we go to filters and we can fix that, I hope. Alright, so similarity can come, there we go, look at that. Now we have some green screen coming in, but we're okay with that. Okay, so we'll close that up. Sorry about that. I'll bet you guys thought your meds were kicking in. Well, mine sure are. How do you think I can do this? No, I'm just kidding. Okay, I'm just good at this anyway. Anyway. If we knew, by the way, back on the gerrymandering, it's been described as the process of politicians, okay, we covered that. Even the conservatively stacked Supreme Court ruled that gerrymandering is clearly designed to exclude minorities and Democratic voters. And of course, gerrymandering works both ways, but for the most part, the Republicans have been really taking advantage of this shit. If we know this is all cheating, why do we continue to do it? Corruption, plain and simple. Speaking of the Supreme Court, now, most of you are wondering, well, you started talking about the occupant, now you're talking about the Supreme Court. So, yeah. So let's go ahead and dive into that. I've only been doing this for 15 minutes or so. I know I'm rambling. What's the obsession with abortion? I mean, I know. Whether you're for or against it, we need to know why it's such a driving issue. And I've talked to my friends about this. But basically, it's money. According to Forbes, maternity revenues for Kimberly-Clark, owned by the Koch brothers, were $9 billion for 2018. Some analysts have said the maternity industry loses roughly $1 million in sales for each abortion. This was very difficult for me to say because what the industry that the Koch, and this is just one, Kimberly-Clark is just one, as you know. I mean, there's Pampers and so forth and what have you. Companies that create maternity. And so what they do is they take all of this money from all of these forced births and they pay off the politicians. We'll go ahead and we'll donate. We'll donate to your cause, to your election. Donate. There are so many words that euphemisms that we use. Donate, bribe you. We're going to use these for bribes. They're just bribes, man. This is corruption. This is corruption on a massive scale, dudes. I can't believe that, the European nation, I know I'm going off the script here. The European nations watch us and they go, how can they just take it like that? Well, we're a nation of laws, but the only problem is the other side is breaking them and getting away with them. Am I suggesting that we could do that too? No, we have to use the laws, the God-given laws, like George Carlin says. How do we know God gave them to us? Corporations have enlisted a religion, or all religions, to create this false moral argument of murder and infanticide, despite the fact that when these women are forced to give birth after even rape or incest, or they can't afford to raise the kid, the same people who are against abortion neglect these children and they starve in the street and they die poor. Again, I don't get the religious moral argument for this, because you care for them when they're in the womb, but you don't care for them when they're in their mother's arms. Okay, and you guys can argue that forever and ever. Again, since I'm not a lady, I don't have to worry too much about that. And most of them are men who are creating these laws. After being forced to read the Bible as a former Catholic student, and I must emphasize the word former, I read nothing about Jesus condemning abortion or hating gays. So why do they do it? Because most religious people will believe pretty much anything that these religious leaders tell them. Even who to vote for. Here, you got to vote for this person. You got to vote for George W. We're waiting for that war so we can get that money from the weapons industry. You know what I'm saying? Okay. More weapons, more war means more money. Another issue with religion, besides the obvious corruption, is their bullshit is tax-free. They pay no taxes. Deemed as a nonprofit, all religious organizations are deemed as nonprofits, despite the Catholic Church and the Protestant churches with their financial empires flaunted openly. This was written into the Constitution because the churches in America, you know the ones that were kicked out of Europe for being too intense, controlled most of the government, and they still do. But we're getting off track. All of this, including the installation of the current occupant, has been developing for over 40 years. As a student of the 80s, I watched Ronald Reagan's include organized religion and corporations to infiltrate our government. When I say infiltrate, I mean it like a spy. They control the government just like Putin does now. Whenever you have people who people believe are gods, or whatever you want to call it, they turn into sheep. And people just do whatever they want. Okay, here, we're going to go ahead and bring this in. Here, let's go ahead and throw in the Russians. Let's go ahead and... It just goes on and on and on. After a global recession in 2008, it's difficult to see why we trust any of them. It's like the third or fourth time that capitalism has failed. I'm a capitalist. Don't get me wrong. I love making money. That's why I'm going to ask sponsors for money. But the problem is is that they're always corrupt. Everybody suffers except for the wealthy people. The 1% never suffer because they take our tax money and they use it any way they want. I know, I sound like a socialist who loves capitalism, like Bernie Sanders. Bernie Sanders made the most money out of all of them. Socialists, an admitted socialist, made more money than the capitalists. Now, wrap your head around that for just a little while, okay? Okay, so back to what we were talking about. One of the most hideous issues or important issues that we're going to face is climate change. I'll skip over the obvious global catastrophes that you already know about, including Houston being underwater from a hurricane. Notice how you didn't hear much about that, did you? Houston, home of oil, the Oilers, was underwater due to climate change that it created. Okay, so let's cut to the chase of the egregious American petroleum industry. Some call it a nation within a nation. That's how much power it has. Like the Vatican in Italy, you've got this little government running the government. One of the obvious questions I've always asked since I was a freshman in college is, why don't they just take their hundreds of billions, their vast fortunes that they have stolen basically from us? Like a gallon of gas used to be $1 back when I was a kid. Now it's like $5 a gallon or whatever it is, you know. Why can't they just help us transition to renewable energy? Okay, you got all the money. You have everything now. Let's now not face the inevitable doom of dying a slow, horrible death called the earth dying. Bees. We can go on. I don't even have to tell you folks what's going on here. You see it. You turn on the news, you see 2 minutes of it, maybe a minute and a half if you're lucky. You see 2 minutes of an island nation or Houston being underwater or Miami soon. We already know Miami's gone. We already know that New Orleans is gone. I mean, there's just some property in America that was created 5 feet below the sea level for some reason. Why would you do such a thing? You know what I'm saying? Oof. All right. Okay. The answer is simple. Drilling oil and gas out of the earth is all they know. If you were born a son's oil drilling person who has worked, whether it was someone in administration, whether it was someone who just gets their hands all oily in their bodies and have to live out on a rig for like years at a time and never see your family. Even if you're all of these people, you think that you could be retrained and you could do something else. Install solar panels, create electric cars, create electric trains. I mean, there's so many cool alternatives out there. Sure, hydrotherapeutic. Hydroelectric is another good way to create energy. There's so many ways, and we've got deserts that we could place solar panels out. We could heat the whole United States, but that would take money out of that would put the oil and gas people out of business. They'd actually have to go out and work for a living, and that would be kind of crazy, Okay, as I wind down this broadcast, I invite any and all views to respectfully respond, explain logically without calling me names, without being a 13-year-old, without acting like a child, like the occupant. If you can just sit and just reasonably talk about, okay, the reason I like the occupant, less taxes. Fair enough. Okay, well, right now that would escapes me, but there are reasons other than racial, okay? So I'm not even going to mention those. But as you know, those are some of the reasons, whether you admit it or not. It's sad to say that, but it is. Because people who disagree completely, that is one of their reasons why they don't like them. So, looking at it from that perspective, it's not necessarily personal, it's just a preference of not hating. There you have it. Oh, thank you for joining me on this historic event here on the Impeachment Vlogs. I'd like to thank you, the viewer, and our wonderful sponsors who have made this broadcast possible. Julian Burns of Burn Bags on eBay. The best bags is Julian Burns Burn Bags on eBay. Foster with Heart Home Care. Just created a new website for those folks. They're responsible for helping me get this broadcast on. Check him out. He's a wonderful guy. Francis. Go to Foster with Heart Home Care. Actually, it's FHH.com. F.A. Daniels Printing, who helped me get the book here for Karen Marie. Helped me print it, publish it. F.A. Daniels Printing helped me all year since I've been back. Christine Jackson Makeup, another one who has been very helpful in getting this broadcast to you. Go to Christine Makeup. Oh, wait a minute. We haven't got that online yet. It's still in development, but she's a sponsor. Lorena Mendez Quiroga, Exodus and Exito.com. We're going to go ahead and have that website. It used to be undocumented, the film, but we had to change that. But Lorena Mendez Quiroga is a definite sponsor here. ABCPrintingLA.com. Jamie Aya over in Westwood has definitely been a sponsor. ABCPrintingLA.com. Customized invites. Perfect for your graduations and your events. Dove Life Entertainment. Specializing and representing people in the business. Go to dovelife.com. Darren Miller Pfeiffer's Self-Inflicted Show has always been there for me. Darren Miller Pfeiffer, thank you so much for making this broadcast possible. This has been CJ Davidson thanking you and saying later days and better ways.